Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Filmmaker of the Future, and now I'd like to introduce you to... my toys! As you can see, they are dinosaurs. But even before it was cool for girls to play with these things, I often had a thing for dinosaurs as a kid. Unfortunately, I didn't become a paleontologist. However, this did mean I did naturally have a thing for the Land Before Time series.
The franchise began in 1988 when the powerhouse team of Don Bluth, Steven Spielberg, and George Lucas released a film inspired by the likes of Bambi and Fantasia. The film was called The Land Before Time. It chronicled the incredible odyssey of 5 different dinosaurs from 5 different herds who to reunite with their families in the promised land known as the Great Valley. This film did so well that it spawned 13 sequels and even a TV show. But today we are looking at the film that started it all.
Now let's take a look at the one, the only, the original, The Land Before Time.
Our story begins in a time before the Ice Age franchise. Whoops, wrong footage. That's better. Where we are introduced to a different desolate wasteland that still succeeds in sustaining life. Specifically, our main characters.
But of all the characters that we are introduced to in this montage, the most special one of all is this little guy.
Littlefoot.
Here I
am. Hello, Arlo.
This character is Littlefoot. He's apparently so special that he gets a Bambi-style greeting by other walks of life. Speaking of walking, Littlefoot's herd, much like the other dinosaur herds, have been forced to find the elusive Great Valley due to the ever-changing landscape. While no one has found it yet, it's like Littlefoot's mother says.
Some things you see with your eyes. Others you see with your heart.
Words of the wise.
We then go from a faith lesson to a lesson in prehistoric segregation when Littlefoot meets a young triceratops named Sarah.
Littlefoot!
Come, Sarah. 3 horns never play with long necks.
Things this minute. I told you, you are not ever to play with those colors.
Now, this is probably something that wouldn't get made nowadays with all the kumbaya stuff in cartoons like Bunsen is a Beast or Steven Universe, but it was the 1980s and you could get away with a lot more back then. For example, the scene that's coming up next.
Later that night, Littlefoot and Sarah break down barriers when they play with a cute little Paleobatrachus.
Paleobatrachus looks very similar to frogs you see today. It had a big head with large eyes and used its long back legs to swim in water. It probably fed on small fish, crabs, and other little critters.
But even in dino times, no one was safe from the evil that is Barney the dinosaur.
Scientifically accurate Barney the dinosaur. He's a T-Rex and ripping flesh is what his arms were used for. Barney had a septic bite, evolutionarily perfected. If you got away, you still would die, cause a bite would get infected. Seriously, kids, get out of there. The hunters are trying to draw.
Okay, it's obviously not the same evil T-Rex that we all know and love, but apparently this one, known simply as Sharptooth, was so awful.
Mother, run! Run!
saving the kids, a horrible earthquake occurs, dividing the herds and leading to the final times that we not only see Sarah's mom, but also Littlefoot's mom as well.
Dear sweet Littlefoot, do you remember the way to the Great Valley?
I guess so. But why do I have to know? You're gonna be with me.
I'll be with you. Even if you can't see me.
What do you mean if I can't see you? I can always see you.
Littlefoot, let your heart guide you. It whispers, so listen closely.
Mother? Mother?
Like I said, you could get away with some interesting stuff in the 80s. As a matter of fact, the scene you just saw was very similar to this scene from Fraggle Rock that was shown just 1 year before this movie's debut. See what I mean?
However, they do successfully comfort us in the form of this scene here, which parallels heavily to one in yet another Jim Henson production. Who's still just as racist as her dad, hoping to find her own way back to her herd and the sisters we'll never see again.
Well, when I find my sisters, I won't be alone.
Then you shall be very lonely.
An innocent little big mouth named Ducky, and I know she's referred to as a swimmer later in the series, but when she's introduced...
I'm not a long neck, I'm a big mouth.
Also, they refer to Littlefoot a couple of times as a flathead in this movie, but I digress.
Anyway, since they are both in...
Moving right along in search of good times and good news, with good friends you can't lose, this could become a habit.
And just like Kermit and Fozzie, Ducky and Littlefoot are immediately joined by other friends, like Petrie, for example.
What? No, you followed.
I fall? What? These are plastic. He can't fly.
Meanwhile, Sarah finds Barney's earthly remains and discovers that, much like Keith Richards, this dinosaur cannot be killed with conventional weapons.
The time has come to awaken him. I call upon the ancient lords of the underwater, bring forth this beast, and awaken.
Eventually reunites with the others, who are discussing the tree star that Littlefoot should have eaten already, and gives an exaggerated description of her encounter.
The Sharptooth!
Sharptooth!
Oh! Come on, Sarah. Sharptooth is dead. He fell down into the big underground. And that's where he met me. Oh, dear brave Sarah.
Dear brave Sarah.
Meanwhile, Ducky does what I'd do and wanders off only to discover something wonderful. A new friend.
Hello. Yes, you can. You are a Spike Tail, so we will call you Spike.
And now they can head for the Promised Land.
And in the Promised Land, it's gonna be so grand. We'll have our fill from the grill as much as we can stand. It'll be so great, oh, we can hardly wait, 'cause we're going to the Promised Land.
The dining was loosey with Moses, but we'll be feasting with Josh in command.
I'd like a taco, please, and some panos and cheese, because we're going to the Promised Land. And in the Promised Land, it's gonna be so grand. We'll have our fill from the grill as much as we...
Eventually, Littlefoot starts seeing the signs his mom was talking about, but he's the only one who's hopeful, as the others want to make like the Beatles and take the easy way out.
But it's the wrong way! Who says? My mother! Then she was the stupid long neck too.
Oh, you did not just insult his mama. especially after all that she did for you.
Just like the adults would do with Toronto in another part of the land, the other kids abandoned Littlefoot to follow Sarah because her way is easier.
Sarah's way is easier.
I think so, too.
Sure enough, with Toronto, the kids discover that the easy way is not the best way when they discover that the floor is not only lava, but also tar pits. And they also discover that they are not alone. The Muppet Man rescued Sarah, but of course Sarah does not thank them because she can't admit that she's wrong. In the end, the kids decide to get rid of Sharptooth once and for all.
What do we do?
Look, we'll coax him to the deep end of the pond. He can't swim with those scrawny arms.
The plan goes off without a hitch, and then...
Hey, Buzz! You're flying!
This isn't flying, this is falling with style.
He's nothing without his choppers. Let me at him.
My friend. Poor Petrie.
It's the 80s.
Fortunately, though, Petrie's okay and there's much rejoicing. Another is finally ready to call it quits on finding the Great Valley. But just like Kimba the White Lion, his mother is willing to give him one last push from beyond the stars. To the Great Valley. From here they reunited with their families and several others who didn't make it to the sequels, like those other three horns that Sarah was apparently correct about.
They all grew up together in the valley, generation upon generation, each passing on to the next the tale of their ancestors' journey to the valley. Long ago.
Honestly, with a finale like that, the film didn't need any sequels. You pretty much summed it up with they all lived happily ever after and their story was told until the end of the dinosaur days. But in the end, it was a great little story that could, and I wouldn't take that away from it. This is Filmmaker of the Future, and we'll see you next time on video. Say goodbye to the audience, Chomper. Bye-bye.